Hello everybody, my name is Cody bringing us yet another video, and in today's video, this is something that kind of got brought up when I was having a conversation with someone. I won't name names, but I was having a conversation, and I was asked about the videos, and what do certain things mean. And I guess it's never, properly crossed my mind that I'll just say certain things. I'll give the units I make like a certain ability, certain little things to their super attack and all these things. But unless you actually have actively played the game for a while or you keep up to date with it, you probably don't actually know what the majority of that really means. I mean, some things are very self-explanatory, like when you see that, the unit has however much attack, however much defense, however much HP, that's fairly self-explanatory. I think everybody knows what attack means, what defense means, what HP means. And then, the name and, the little, description style of thing that go with it, like it's Kami is the character, and then he has the little thing that's before his name. You know, fairly self-explanatory what that is. Typings, if you've played like Pokemon or something, you understand typings. There is type advantage and type disadvantage. If you're advantage to them, you deal more damage. If you're disadvantage, you deal less damage. Fairly common stuff. There's nothing crazy insane about it. So nothing to really, stop the press and make a whole video about that. Maybe include it in a different video style of thing, but nothing to really go over right now. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about the effects in Dokkan and what they do. I'm talking about stuff that I've put in passive, stuff that is put in the super attack, kind of the things that when you see it, you're like, ooh, wait, what does that mean? How does that work? Exactly, what is it? And is it actually a good thing? Is it bad? What does it do? So that's kind of what I'm explaining, starting with the most basics, some of the more basic ones, going to more complicated ones. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. If I did, hopefully I'll remember them during the video. If not, then hopefully I'll bring them up. Or if, I say something that I didn't bring up in this video or later on, and you guys want to know what it means, then don't be afraid to ask me. Just put in the comments, oh man, Cody, what is, you forgot to talk about damage reduction. It's right there, of course, but if I say, oh, what does damage reduction mean? What do you mean that the unit has a, raises attack for 5 turns? How does that work? Then, I'll explain it again or something like that. So, starting with one of the more basic, one of the more common ones is raising attack and defense. This goes to that unit, which means that it's usually for a friendly unit type of thing, and it raises that stat. If it's a raise attack, then it raises attack for however long. Raise defense is for defense for however long. Now, you can have both, but if you have attack, you don't need defense, and you have defense, you don't need attack. They can be separate, but they can also be together, so it can be a and rather than an or. So, and X amount of turns, it's always going to be an odd number. It's going to be for 1 turn, which means that you use the super attack, and you get that buff for that turn, or you have multiple turns, something like 3 and 5, stuff like that. And why is it odd? It's because you're on basically turn 1, and then you're not going to be, that unit won't be back on turn 2, and then it'll come back on turn 3, or it'll be turn 2, skip 3, go to 4. So it always wants to have a 1, 3, 5, rather than like a 1, 2, 3, 4, like a 2-turn buff, and then the unit doesn't get the second turn of his buff. So nothing like that. How does the actual buffing go between turns? So if it's something like a 3-turn buff, then on turn 1 it'll get the buff. On turn 3, when the card returns, then that means that it'll have the buff from the super attack it just performed, and it continues to have the buff from turn 1. So if you had a defense stack from turn 1, then that defense will carry over from turn 1 to turn 3, but then once you get to turn 5, the buff that you got from turn 3 still exists, but the buff that you got from turn 1 will no longer exist. So you'll only have the buff that you got from turn 3, and then you'll get the buff you get from turn 5. So it goes away, so, going from, that's with 3 turns. If you have 5, then once you get to the 7th one, 1 goes away, or if you're on the 6th turn because you floated or something, so on and so on for that. But then there also is a thing known as the Kaioken mechanic, which is an infinite quote-unquote stack, which is actually 99 turns, So if it doesn't say raises attack for 1 turn, raises attack for 3 turns, and it just says raises attack, that means that it just continuously raises attack, raises defense. There is no stopping. Yes, at 99 turns it stops, it'll delete whatever you had in turn 1, but unless you are actively trying to, the likelihood that you get to turn 99 in an actual event is very unlikely. That is if you're actively saying, hey, I want to see what the maximum potential is. How high will the defense go? How high will the attack stat be if I stack through 99 turns? So that's an infinite, as we'll call it, but it's 99 technically, and we'll call it the Kaioken mechanic. So if I ever do a video, which I think the Piccolo one did, he raised attack, that's infinitely stacking, and I'm pretty sure I said the Kaioken mechanic. That is what that means. Next up is lowering attack slash defense. This is basically the inverse of raise attack and defense, where instead of it being on you, increasing your stats, it's on the enemy, decreasing their stats. So it's a very helpful thing when it is lower attack, because that means that the enemy will hit lighter. So rather than that attack being, 200,000, you lower it by 50%, and now it's doing, 100,000. I don't know if that's actually proper. I don't know how. I'm not a math whiz, so I don't know if that's quite correct. If a 50% would lead to 200 to go to 100, but basically, lowering attack is a very, very useful tool. Raising defense, not so much, because in the newer events and a lot of events, it's less that the enemy has a ridiculously high defense, it's that the enemy has a good bit of damage mitigation, which I'll get to here in a bit. It's there in damage reduction, damage mitigation. Same thing, I have a couple of units that have had that effect on them. And most events will actually become immune to this. So if you're relying, you don't bringing any heavily defensive units and you're just relying on the fact that every unit can lower the enemy's attack, not exactly the most reliable thing, because after a bit, the enemy, depending on the event, the enemy will just become immune and will no longer be able to have their stats lowered in that case. So, not exactly the thing that you want, to purely depend on. You can still depend on it in early stuff, or in something like Super Battle Road, where they can never become immune to anything, so you can consistently have their stats lowered. So, up next would be Stunning. There's 2 of them, there's Stun and then Seal. Similar, kind of. What Stunning does is that on proc, it just stuns the enemy. The enemy will, whatever is after, whatever they were supposed to do after you had stunned them, they'll no longer do. They lose their turn. So if they have, the first attacker is the one that stuns them, if there was 2 attacks before your character got to attack, you'll take the 2 attacks, your character will attack and stun, and then if there's 4 attacks after the first attacker on your team, after he got stunned, those 4 attacks are just null and void. They no longer exist. So it's a very strong thing to do, because it'll take an enemy out of the fight for that 1 turn. But remember, this is also like attack and defense lowering. The enemy will become immune to it after, after a certain point, or maybe they just were never able to be affected by it. And then you also, in Super Battle Road, they cannot become immune to stunning. Next up is Sealing. For Stun and Seal, there might be a few units that are a 100% chance, but for the most part, it's always a percent chance. It'll happen, or maybe it won't. It's a proc chance, so nothing to really 100% rely on, unless it says that it automatically will do it. So, what Sealing does, it won't completely, negate the enemy's turn, but what it does is it'll say, if the enemy was supposed to super attack on that turn, and it was after, and it happened, after they got sealed, if they super attacked before your first unit attacked, then there's nothing you could do about it. But if you got to it and you sealed them, if they were supposed to have a super attack later that turn, they will no longer have a super attack. So they'll only have normal attacks. This is the huge thing, because rather than that 200,000 damage super attack, it's only, depending on the unit, maybe like a, you know, tens of damage, hundreds maybe, and then like low thousands maybe, depending on the unit, depending on the typing stuff. It's a very strong thing for counter units, which I'll get to in a little bit, and I'll explain why. And once again, like stunning and attack and lowering, enemies will become immune. So you have damage reduction, which I think I've created units that have a damage reduction. What this does is, unlike defense, where it's saying, oh, because you have X amount as your defense, that means that when you get hit by the attack, it'll calculate and do all the math, and then it'll say, alright, well, because this is your defense, you will only take X amount of damage. But then if your defense isn't high, then you take a lot of damage. If your defense is high, you take less damage. A very, basic thing. And note that your units can also have their defense and attack lowered. So, you might have a high defense, but if the enemy lowers your defense with their super attack, then that means for the rest of that turn, or for however long, their defense will be lowered. Some units lower their defense on super attack. I believe the Garlic Jr. I made has defense lowering on super attack on 18 key. And then the LR SSJ3 Goku also has that he loses 70% defense when launching an 18 key super. Yeah. So you might lower your defense, but what damage reduction or mitigation is there's been a couple of units when I said reduce the damage received by 20% or something like that. What that means is that rather than the attack being 100 damage, and that's with the defense calculated, it'll be 100 damage. With the mitigation, it'll say no, it's 20% less. You will only take 80 damage. It cannot be 100. You will automatically take 80 on that one. So when a unit has damage mitigation, if it's low, like something like in the 20s, like Zamasu, the AGL Zamasu, the physical Vegeta Blue, they aren't like the, when you get hit, you just will not take damage. They're somewhat low. That will protect you from normal attacks, but something like a super attack, you'll still get shell-shocked from it. Type advantage against you will still do a decent bit of damage. So if you have a low amount of damage mitigation and that unit is not getting defense, you'll usually want to run them with a support that can give them some form of defense. So they'll take less damage than it would seem they would. But then you have units like the Strength Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta or Tech Golden Frieza, AGL Golden Frieza, where they have a monstrous damage reduction, 75, 80, 90. That area is where defense does not need to exist, because you could take a 200,000 damage super attack, but that has to be hit with a 90% reduction to it, which at that point, you're taking in like 10,000 damage, which when you were supposed to take 200 plus thousand, and now you're only taking like thousands, 10,000, that is like a laugh at that point. So, a very strong thing when it's a high amount, but if you have a low one, you'll still want a defensive stab. After that is dodge, fairly self-explanatory, and the enemy tries to attack, and you dodge. Your unit will avoid and take 0 damage. Some things will cancel it, like the legendary Goku event, the MUI, the int MUI very fast last phase. You cannot dodge that phase. So, and then after that, it's cancel dodge / can't miss. Phrasing is always weird, like an always hit type of thing. Most, like the one that I can think of right off the bat is AGL Android 13, when going against a unit with Goku in the name, like excluding some things like Ginyu Goku or whatever, you automatically will hit. It does not matter if they can dodge, you will hit. So, that is a thing. And then also, active skills cannot miss. So something like the LR Go Bros, LR SSJ4s, things like that, those cannot miss. So don't worry about, swiping up and then you go through the whole animation and then Goku just dodges anyways. That cannot physically happen. It automatically hits. So don't worry about that. Next, you have Ignore Guard. This is basically that you'll deal a minimum. I did skip over one, so I'll explain that. I wanted to put Ignore Guard first. Ignore Guard is basically when a Strength type hits an AGL type, you're going up against a type disadvantage. A Fire type trying to hit a Water type, or a Water type, something like that. Basically, you should reduce, the damage is greatly reduced because your disadvantage. This will basically say, instead of that arrow being directly down in red, it'll be neutral, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll be as if the Strength type was hitting a Tech type. There's no disadvantage, you're not getting advantage, nothing like that. Unlike Effective Against All Types, that should say effective, not affecting, what that basically says is that, the physical, when he hits a in type, then you'll deal a lot of damage because you're super effective. What this says is that physical type will now be super effective against, in. They'll also be super effective against Tech. They'll be effective against AGL, against Strength, even though they're supposed to be weak against them. They're not. And then they'll also be super effective against Physical, which means that instead of a neutral arrow or the complete down arrow, it'll actually be an upward arrow. So a very strong thing. And what Guard is, which I noticed I forgot, what Guard is basically saying that basically is as if your physical type was every single unit that's hitting that physical type is as if they were hitting as if they were an in type. So they're at disadvantage. A very strong thing. Next is counter. There are two types of counter. First, you have normal attack counters. Very good when you have something who can seal, so they all have to be super normal attacks. I believe every single normal attack counter, like the Super Vegetos, are a 100% chance to counter. It's not like a 70% chance to counter. No, you automatically counter. What this does is you get hit, you take the damage, and then you counter it, you hit back and deal damage. So you have, you get hit. It's not just like, oh, you don't take any damage and you counter. You can, if that unit has dodge, it has a dodge chance. Like you gave your Vegito, your AGL Super Vegito a 5% chance to dodge, and a normal attack comes, it's supposed to hit them, but they dodge it, they will still counter. But it has to, it'll deal damage and then they'll do it, as opposed to the other version, which is super attack countering, which is when it'll be a super attack, that big boy damage, but they'll completely dodge it. It won't just be, they get hit and then they hit back. It'll be that super attack comes in, they say no, move out of the way, and then counter like that. Most commonly is done with the SSJ4s, SSJ4 Gogeta, SSJ4 Goku, and SSJ4 Vegeta. I believe every single one other than the physical free-to-play SSJ4 Goku that came during the 4th year anniversary, I believe all of them have the chance to dodge and counter with tremendous power against super attacks. So a very, very good thing. Some units will give them a higher chance to hit a crit. Crits are basically just saying, hey, I'm ignoring all your defense and your reduction and any typing, and I'm just hitting for the max amount I can do, basically. Heal. I think I've done a couple of units that have heal, usually like the Namekians for the most part. It's just the regain health. You can do it from, heal at the start of turn, you can heal at the end of turn, you can heal when you damage an enemy, you can heal when you kill an enemy, and you can heal when collecting orbs. All units heal when they collect the same type of orb, so if a strength type picks up a strength type orb, they'll heal a little bit depending on their defense stat. But if you have a certain unit, then it'd be like, oh, heal, 10,000 HP per, strength orb picked up. So that means that if you pick up 12, strength type orbs and you heal 10,000 each, that's 120,000 healed. So, a very strong thing. Killing means that, it's a finishing blow is actually what it would be in the game. It's just like, if you're the one that KO'd that enemy, you'll heal at start and end of turn, self-explanatory. When dealing damage, it says, oh, I dealt 100,000 damage, I heal back 30% of that. So, And then you have changing orbs slash nuking. Changing orbs will say, a unit will be like, oh, change a random orb to physical, or it'll be change all int orbs to physical, or it'll be change random orbs to rainbow key spheres, something like that. And then these are a very helpful thing. A lot of nuking units have it, or a lot of units that you would want to use back when we had a nuking meta. Nuking would be for every X type of orb you gain Y. It should say a Y because X and X would not be the same. So it'd be X type of orbs. Then you would gain Y amount of attack and or defense. That just increases your thing. One of the big ones is the physical Goku and Vegeta Blue that came with the Resurrection F stuff, and they awakened with the Kaioken Blue Goku. Basically, it says that they'll change an orb to their respective typing. Goku will change orbs to physical, Vegeta will change them to tech, and then they'll gain 20% per key sphere obtained, attack and defense per key sphere obtained, and they'll gain 30% if it is a physical or if it is a tech, tech respective, which means that, if you grab 5 key spheres, it'll be 100%. If you grab 5 of their same type key sphere, it'll be 150%, which is a huge amount. And if you grab them, it'll calculate their defense stat, and then it'll do the healing. So it might be like, 20,000 defense, but then you pick up all, so like you won't get a lot for picking up all those physical type orbs, but then, when you pick them all up, you go into the 100,000s. It'll count as if, the healing will count as if you had picked up all those orbs and you're at 100,000 rather than at 20,000. So a very strong thing. Another thing is that I gave to the Garlic Jr. is cannot be KO'd from a certain type. The Strength, Explosion of Anger, Super Saiyan Goku, when, he's doing are you talking about Krillin? No, he does the You Fool when Frieza tries to kill him after he gave him energy. That's saying that when he is above 30% HP, he cannot be one-shot. So even if the attack does 1,000,000 damage, he will not and cannot die. And then after that would be 4C, enemy super attack. That's just like, a basic, if the enemy is going to be super attacking that turn, you'll know where they're super attacking. Yeah, so the forcing is a very strong thing, and it's not just like, if the enemy is super attacking, then you'll see it. It is overall, you will know if there are, all of the attacks. So if there's 7 attacks in the turn, you will see that each of them is a normal attack, and then the super attack will be like a red ring saying, whoa, super attack, wow, wow, type of thing. Things that, there's like a, chance for an additional attack. It's basically saying, like the Vegeta Blue is basically just saying, there's a chance that, you'll get your, automatic attack, and then there's a chance that you'll get more attacks in that turn, and then there's like a chance that the attack might become a super attack. Fairly basic stuff. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. If I am, and you guys, realize that I forgot something, then do tell me. If I remember later on in another video, the next video today, for the category stuff, for the character concept, then, I'll try to be like, hey, I forgot about this. But, yeah, that does it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, then consider hitting the like button and tell me down below what you guys liked so I can continue doing it. If you guys didn't like the video, then go ahead and dislike and tell me what you didn't like so I don't do it again, so I got, you guys can like it more and more each time. If you guys want to know when the next video comes out, the best way to know is by subscribing. But, that does it for this video. Bye, guys.